Thursday, 2:14 p.m. My phone lit up. Extending the trip by a week. Don't wait up. Love you. My wife doesn't text like that. She doesn't say babe, and when she's excited she writes paragraphs. Suddenly she's sending a bumper sticker? Something was off. I didn't argue. I didn't call. I typed 9 calm words. Take your time. My attorney loves documentation. Then I waited. 30 seconds. 1 ring. Voicemail. 2 rings. Voicemail. 3rd ring. I answered. Her voice was cheerful on top, panic underneath. Hey, what attorney? That was enough. Innocent people don't sprint to explanations. They ask what's wrong. I leaned back, watching red receipts blink like confession lights. If you want to know how a marriage actually cracks, it's not from a scream. It's from a sentence that doesn't sound like the person you married, and the silence that follows it. Stay with me. I'll show how I knew and what happened the moment I proved it. In IT security, we have a simple rule I borrowed for marriage. Software doesn't lie. People do. I don't mean that cruelly. I mean texts, timestamps, and habits are honest even when we aren't. Think about your coffee maker. It sputters the same way every morning. My wife's messages were like that, predictable in all the little ways. She used complete sentences, too many commas, and always a smiley after good news. Thursday's text sounded like a stranger wrote it on the back of a napkin. Short, vague, no smiley. If you're over 30, you've learned to trust your gut about tone. Mine didn't just whisper, it flipped on the floodlights. I didn't accuse her. I did what every calm adult does when something feels off. I opened a mental notebook and started a list. The first line read, "This is not how she talks." I didn't know where the list would end, but I knew exactly where it began. Climax. I decided to compare this message against her usual patterns, line by line. When you've been with someone 6 years, you learn their rhythms the way you know the route home. My wife usually sends 3 texts instead of 1, always adds an exclamation, and never, ever signs off with love you in a period. It's a heart or nothing. Thursday's message was a bumper sticker. Extending the trip, don't wait up. If you've ever watched a friend dodge a question at a cookout, you know the feeling. They answer fast, just not fully. I lined up old messages beside the new one on my screen, like comparing 2 receipts. The differences weren't loud, but they were consistent. Her normal texts had warmth. This one had distance. Her normal texts had specifics. This one had fog. People can fake content, but they struggle to fake cadence. It's why a forged signature looks right until you see the strokes. I didn't explode. I zoomed in. Climax. Then I remembered. She'd been out of service for days, yet suddenly had perfect bars. All week she'd said the resort's cell service was terrible. Fine, plenty of places still have dead zones, but somehow from that same dead zone, she'd posted a few bright, crisp Instagram stories with location stickers and looping music. If you're between 30 and 65, you've seen this trick in life, not just online. Folks claim they can't talk, but they can share. I'm not a detective. I'm a husband with a decent memory. I scrolled through her stories again and noticed what she didn't say. Names of friends, quick inside jokes, anything that sounded like a real trip. It was all sun, drinks, and captions that read like brochures. Silence in the group chat, noise on the timeline. That contrast bothered me more than the love you. When someone wants you informed, they call. When they want you reassured, they post. Climax. So I opened her latest story and paused it frame by frame, hunting for one small mistake. I'd looked up her resort the day she left. Curiosity, not control. The photos online showed modern white buildings with desert landscaping and big, clean sightlines. Her story showed dark wood beams and oak trees. Arizona has a lot of things. Oak canopies aren't high on the list. If you've ever ordered something that looked perfect on a website and got something different, you know the feeling. The vibe was off. Even the pool chairs didn't match the brand's photos. I split my phone screen. The resort's gallery on top, her story on bottom. Not even close. Could she be at a different property nearby? Sure, but that would be an odd change without a word. I felt my stomach do that slow elevator drop adults know well, the one you get when an email subject says, "We need to talk." Climax. Then a shadow in the glass behind her caught my eye. Someone else was in the frame. Look long enough at a room, and it confesses. The ceiling fan was a different style than the resort's. The art on the wall leaned modern farmhouse, not spa luxe. The light quality was wrong for Arizona sunsets, warmer, more humid, like Texas evenings after a storm. I'm not a lighting expert. I'm a homeowner who's changed enough bulbs to know the color of a place. I paused the video and studied the angles. Through the window, the hill line looked familiar, like the ones west of Austin, low, wooded, not jagged desert. It's funny how middle age recalibrates your instincts. You stop chasing feelings and start weighing facts. Furniture doesn't cheat, geography doesn't smooth talk, and windows can't keep secrets. Climax. In the next clip, the glass sliding door briefly turned into a mirror, and it showed more than she meant to share. There he was, a man's outline moving across the room behind her. Bare legs, dark hair, a watch with a thick band. Not a friend's ponytail, not one of the girls, not a staff member passing by. A man at ease in a private space. If you've ever walked into a surprise in your own house, a light left on, a chair pulled out, you recognize the intimacy of small details. This wasn't a hotel hallway cameo. This was a morning routine. My chest didn't thump, it steadied. Adrenaline makes some people loud. It makes me careful. I took a screenshot, then another, then one more with the little scrub bar visible and the reflection circled for myself. I still hadn't accused her. I hadn't said a word. That matters. When the truth is on your side, patience is a weapon. Climax. I needed confirmation from something that doesn't wobble. Raw data tied to the photo. In my line of work, we don't chase ghosts. We follow artifacts. Without getting technical, photos carry crumbs. When, roughly where, how they were captured. I wasn't hacking anything. I was looking at the same clues any careful adult can. Timestamps, location tags, consistency. The point isn't to play spy. It's to stop arguing with a story and start listening to the facts. I took notes the way I do for big projects. Simple, clear, dated. Screen, pen, breathe. If you've ever handled a home insurance claim or a contractor dispute, you know the drill. Document first, discuss later. My hunch was now a checklist. Tone shift, resort mismatch, reflection, timing. Adults don't need drama to be decisive. We need enough truth to stop second-guessing ourselves. Climax. Next step was basic and boring, the kind of phone call that either calms you down or changes your week. I called the resort, gave the name, the dates, the calm voice I use with customer service. I wanted a yes so badly I could taste it. Maybe I'm wrong, I thought. Maybe I'm tired. The clerk checked again, and said the sentence that turned my stomach to stone. We don't have a reservation under that name. No room, no record, nothing to misread. Older folks will understand this. There's a difference between suspicion and verification. Suspicion keeps you awake. Verification tells you whether to make coffee or make a plan. I thanked the clerk, hung up, and stared at the wall. A younger me might have driven 2 hours and pounded on doors. A grown man knows there's more than one kind of power. Speaking first is one. Waiting with proof is another. Climax. I chose the second kind, and opened my laptop to find something she'd forgotten. I typed one sentence to myself. Don't ask, find. Asking invites performance. Finding invites clarity. I opened the location sharing we'd set up after a bad storm last year, something we both agreed on for safety. If you've ever tracked a teenager's phone during a snow day or found your own device after leaving it at the dentist, you know the little relief bubble that pops when the map loads. A blue dot appeared, steady, familiar, close to home. Not in Arizona, west of Austin. If my heart had been in a courtroom, the bailiff just said, "All rise." I didn't screenshot yet. I watched the dot for a minute the way you watch a newborn breathe. Quiet, focused, counting seconds. Climax. Then I clicked for the exact address because addresses introduce you to owners, and owners have names. Westlake Hills. I know those streets. They're where people go for privacy, oak trees, and a view that never gets old. 2 hours from my driveway, not 2 states away. If you're over 30, you've learned this truth. Distance doesn't make a lie better, it just makes it pricier. I pulled up the satellite view and saw a deck with railings that looked like the ones from her story. I could have driven over, I could have called friends. Instead, I wrote down the number, the street, and the time. Anger makes messes. Notes make cases. I sat back and let the room settle. Somewhere between the refrigerator hum and the AC kicking on, the fear fell away. I wasn't chasing a rumor. Chasing. I was looking at coordinates. Climax. A property search would tell me who paid for that view and whether the name would ring a bell. County records don't care about feelings. The house came back under a name I recognized from my wife's freelance emails. Derek Shaw, creative director, separated recently, proud of his fresh start. If you've lived long enough, you know that fresh start can mean unfinished business. I pulled up his professional page, saw the same dark hair, the same build, the same watch from a beach photo last summer, and felt that quiet confirmation older adults respect. Not a hunch, not a hope, but a match. I didn't scream, I didn't text. I circled one word in my notebook, cover, and underlined it twice. Trips have itineraries, covers have scripts. Scripts fall apart when reality walks in. Climax. And that's when I knew this wasn't a girl's trip at all. It was a story waiting to be tested line by line. I started with something anyone can do, a simple look at Derek's public profile. His page was the kind people polish when they want to look dependable. Clean headshot, promotions listed like mile markers, and a vacation album that did more talking than the captions. In one beach photo, he's turning toward the camera, shoulder to the sun, a dark tattoo peeking out from under a t-shirt sleeve. Same build as the man in my wife's reflection, same haircut, same thick band watch. If you've raised kids or paid a mortgage, you know the feeling of comparing two bills side by side. Little details suddenly matter. I wasn't hunting for a smoking gun. I was matching shapes. The watch band was the nudge I needed. It's a small thing, but small things add up when the story is thin. I saved the image, took a breath, and reminded myself why patience beats anger. Climax. If the next conversation happened, I wanted a clean record. No, he said, she said. I toggled screen record, the way you might turn on a dash cam before a long drive. Not to catch someone, but to keep the road honest. Adults over 30 learn this early. Document first, argue later. I cleared my desk, put my phone face up, and set a pen on a notepad the way my dad used to before business calls. No drama, just order. If nothing happened, fine. If something did, I'd have more than a foggy memory. I also made myself a rule. Listen more than I talk. Let silence do a little work. We live in a world where people fill gaps with explanations. When you're calm, gaps tell you more than speeches. As the recorder icon glowed, I felt my shoulders drop. Whatever came next, I'd meet it with facts, not volume. Climax. The phone buzzed. Her name lit up the screen. I let it ring twice, then answered. Her voice came bright, but the edges were tight. You can hear a smile that isn't real. Hey, what attorney? Innocent people ask. What's wrong? First. Guilty people hunt for the threat. I kept my tone light, the way you talk to a neighbor when the trash cans got mixed up. Just been having some interesting conversations, I said, letting the words hang. Silence. Then the quick shuffle of a mind grabbing for a safe story. Okay, but what kind of conversations? If you've lived long enough, you know not to fill silence for someone who's hiding. I didn't accuse. I didn't lead. I just waited, the way you wait for a teapot to whistle. Pressure has a sound, and when it shows up, it's hard to mistake. Climax. Then she stepped in it. Front desk must have made a mistake. I hadn't mentioned calling the resort. I felt it more than heard it. The thud of a bad script landing. People who tell the truth keep their answers small. People who lie hand you extras you didn't order. Front desk must have made a mistake, she said again, testing the line. I watched the waveform on my recorder and wrote 3 words on my pad, front desk slip, desk. If you've ever negotiated a car price or questioned a hospital bill, you know that moment when a number changes too quickly. It's not rage you feel, it's clarity. I still didn't correct her. I nodded into the phone like she could see it and said, huh. That, huh, was my seatbelt. It kept me from swerving into an argument I couldn't win. She kept talking, filling space. Climax. Then came the second stumble. She blamed bad service while her bars were full and texts flew in. I barely have service, she said, right as another message pinged in with full signal and a red receipt. If you're over 30, you've met this kind of contradiction. From bosses, from contractors, from yourself on a bad day. The head says one thing, the page shows another. I took a slow breath and wrote, full bars. I could have called her out, demanded names, demanded proof. That's what younger me might have done. Older me has learned that arguments are like quicksand. The more you thrash, the deeper you sink. I stuck to basics. Got it, I said. Tough reception. You could hear relief in her exhale, like she thought the storm had drifted past. I wasn't the storm, I was the barometer. Climax. She tried a new angle. You're controlling. That was strike 3, but I let it land on its own. You're controlling, she said, voice climbing a rung. I kept mine on the ground. I'm reading data we turned on for safety, remember? After the floods last year? You can love someone and still refuse to accept a false label. If you've ever set a boundary at work or with family, you know how that feels. Steady, not loud. I reminded her of the night we both agreed to share locations because the power kept cutting out. She knew it was true. You can't fight a memory you live together. The air thinned. The argument she wanted died on the vine. I wrote one more note, safety control. Then I went quiet again, letting the room breathe for both of us. Climax. With her script wobbling, I shifted from conversation to curation, capturing times, phrases, little tells. I time-stamped everything. First call, first front desk, first no service, first controlling. Not because I wanted a courtroom speech, but because adulthood teaches you how memory drifts. Notes keep it honest. If you've ever sorted a shoebox of receipts before tax day, you know the calm that comes from making a messy pile mean something. I wasn't building a gotcha. I was building a clear picture for myself, so I wouldn't talk myself out of what I'd already seen. It's easy to gaslight yourself when the heart wants comfort. The pen disagrees. Each line on the pad made the room quieter. Anger knocked. I didn't answer. I kept writing. Climax. Then I took the step that turned suspicion into substance. I captured her location beside Derek's address, on one screen. There's a difference between being mad and being precise. I chose precise. I opened the map, centered her dot, and lined it up with Derek's street number. I didn't screen grab right away. I watched it sit there like a porch light, steady, unbothered, exactly where it had been all week. If you're 30-65, you've learned the gift of waiting 10 extra seconds before you act. Those seconds keep you from writing emails you regret or saying things you can't unsay. When the dot didn't move, I took a single screenshot and saved it to a folder labeled with the date. Then I closed my eyes and pictured the kitchen. The same humming fridge, the same quiet house, the same man deciding who he wanted to be. Climax. The phone buzzed again, an old colleague calling with a detail I didn't expect to matter as much as it did. My colleague didn't know a thing about my marriage. He just liked talking shop. You see the new builds near Barton Creek? He asked. A creative director I met keeps bragging about his deck view. I didn't mention names. I just asked questions a neighbor might ask. What street, which slope, oak or cedar? He laughed and said, Oak for days, Westlake Hills. Guy's name is Derek something. The world is small when you've lived in one city long enough. The pieces didn't fall into place. They were already there, waiting for me to notice. Adults call this confirmation. It's the part where your gut and the map finally shake hands. I thanked him, hung up, and stared at the notes I'd made all afternoon. Climax. Now it was time to connect the long game, her freelance timeline, with his fresh start. I pulled up an image of Derek's deck from his public posts. The slats, the railing, the way the morning light hit the boards. It matched the angle in her coffee story almost board for board. My colleague's mention of Barton Creek wasn't proof on its own, but it was the nudge that keeps older adults from dismissing what's right in front of them. If you've ever heard two different neighbors tell the same story about the same barking dog, you know how credibility gathers weight. I wrote Barton Creek Oak Deck on the same line as the location screenshot. It felt less like discovery and more like inventory. No flashy moment, just a shelf filling up, one labeled box at a time. Climax. To finish the shelf, I needed dates, hers and his, on the same timeline, side by side. I printed 2 calendars, old school because paper keeps you honest. On the left, her freelance sprints, late nights, and weekend meetings. On the right, his posts about moving, separation, and long hours at the office. I drew lines where the dates overlapped. There weren't many days apart. If you're over 30, you've learned that patterns don't announce themselves. They sit there, waiting for you to pick up a pen. The more I traced, the quieter the kitchen felt. No shouting, no drama, just the patient math of adult life. You don't have to be a detective to read a calendar. You just have to stop hoping it says something kinder. Climax. One overlap stood out like a thumbprint, the week everything began. I circled it in red. 6 months back, her messages changed tone the same week his fresh start began. That's not fate. That's an intersection. Most of us have lived through one. A job change that matches a personality shift. A new hobby that eats dinner time. A sudden push for privacy that shows up with a new password. I stared at that week until the numbers blurred. I wasn't deciding whether to forgive. I was deciding whether to keep lying to myself. Adults know the difference. One takes time, the other takes honesty. I capped my pen and looked at the recorder light still glowing on my screen, faithful and quiet, like it had been all afternoon. Climax. The next move wouldn't be loud, it would be strategic, and it would start with my reply, not her story. I sent 3 words and set the phone face down. Take your time. You learn after 30 that the calmest sentence in the room usually wins. I wasn't baiting her, I was measuring. 10 seconds later, the first message landed hard. We need to talk. Then another. You're overreacting. That's how panic moves. Short, fast, and off-key. I poured a glass of water and leaned on the counter like it was any other Thursday. Older adults know this drill from work and family both. When a story is false, it starts sprinting. Real things don't rush. I didn't ask questions. Questions give people places to hide. I gave her space instead. Space makes noise. More pings came in. Half apologies, half threats. A weather pattern pretending to be conversation. I let it pass over. The house hummed. The fridge clicked. My breathing stayed slow. Climax. When the call finally came through, I answered on the 3rd ring and asked one small, ordinary question. I didn't ask why. I asked who. Adults know the difference. Who are you with? I said, like I was asking a neighbor who borrowed the ladder. Work friends, she answered fast. Too fast. Last week it was high school girls. Life teaches you to look for agreement in the little things. Liars trip on their own shoes. I didn't accuse. I repeated her words back, gentle as a mirror. Work friends? She filled the silence with adjectives. You don't know them. New team. Spontaneous. If you've been to enough office parties, you know how flimsy that sounds. Real friends have names. After 30, we collect them like family. Karen from accounting, Mike from church, the neighbor with the boat. She offered none. I noted the switch. People under pressure swap nouns for fog. Climax. I set my sandwich down and tested the hinge on memory. Last week you said reunion, remember? I took a bite. Mayo, turkey, the same late dinner I've had 100 times after long days. Food grounds you. That's the thing about middle age. Your habits become ballast when life rocks the boat. She pushed back. You're twisting my words. I swallowed, wiped my hands, and said, no, I'm reading them. Calm isn't a trick, it's traction. It keeps you from sliding into the ditch. I've seen men my age get loud and lose the plot. I've done it. This time, I kept my voice where a coach keeps his tone in the 4th quarter. Measured, specific, nothing fancy. Which friends? I asked again, soft. Silence. Then the scrape of an invented detail. My pen hovered over the pad without touching it. I didn't need more ink. I needed one true noun. Climax. Instead, she reached for emotion. Fast and familiar. I love you. I would never. I love you, I would never, is what people say right before you ask for the receipt. It's the guarantee at the door before you've stepped inside. I didn't bite. I haven't accused you of anything, I said. I asked who. If you've raised teens or managed teams, you know this move. Shift the topic, warm the air, make it about feelings. Feelings matter. Facts decide. I kept the lane narrow and the speed legal. Name one friend on the trip, I said, steady. She sniffed, cleared her throat, then gave me a first name so common it belonged to half the country. I let it hang. Names come with context when they're real. The mom with the minivan, the one who hates red wine, the guy with the bad knee. Her name had no hooks, just fog. I looked at the clock. The room felt taller. Climax. She pivoted again, this time to a story with sympathy built in. A friend hiding during a divorce. Okay, she said. One of the girls is going through a brutal divorce. We're staying at her friend's place for safety. I couldn't tell you. Sympathy is powerful. After 30, we've all seen enough sorrow to want to make room for it. But sympathy also has a shape. Real hardship carries detail, a county, a lawyer, a timeline. A vague hardship is a cloak. I asked, "What's her name?" She hesitated like the floorboard that squeaks every time you step over it. I didn't press. Pressing invites theater. "I'm not asking to call her," I said. "I'm asking to believe you." The line thinned to static. I pictured the deck I'd already seen and the reflection I couldn't unsee. Climax. Then I put down the cloak and picked up the deed. Interesting, because that house belongs to Derek Shaw. You could hear the room she was in shrink, not the sigh of someone misunderstood, the silence of someone out of script. I didn't keep talking. Adults learn to let the truth sit where it lands. She tried a quick pivot. "He's just a friend from work." That sentence has ended more marriages than infidelity itself. "Then this is easy," I said. "Tell me why you needed secrecy and why the resort can't find your name." She exhaled like she'd been running indoors. "Front desk messed up. I told you." "You did," I said. "Before I did." The phone crackled. Somewhere a refrigerator motor kicked on. I felt the house hold me up. A younger me might have asked for keys, for explanations, for apologies. Climax. An older me offered something else, space, and a promise I would keep. "I'll come home tonight," she said. A truce paper waved into the phone. I pictured us at the table, circling the same arguments, rewriting the same lines. Space is not punishment, it's clarity. "No need," I said. "Enjoy your trip." That sentence wasn't ice. It was a stop sign. I'm not opposed to talking, I'm opposed to spinning. If you've ever paused a fight to mow the lawn or take a walk, you know how dignity can look like distance from the outside. I wanted a conversation with gravity, not theatrics. "We'll talk when the facts stop moving," I added. She protested. Noise about control, about fear, about me making a problem. The words bumped into each other like carts in a crowded aisle. Climax. I let them pass and said the most adult thing I could. "When you're ready to be specific, I'm here." Silence isn't empty. It's leverage. I didn't hang up. I didn't fill the pause. You learn in middle age that people reveal themselves if you give them a gentle place to fall. She landed on certainty she didn't have. "You're wrong," she said, flat. "There's nothing to find." Certainty is a strange sound when the evidence already exists. I watched the recorder light glow, steady as a porch lamp. I thought about the men I admire, fathers, uncles, bosses, who held lines without shouting. Calm is contagious. It lowers the temperature of bad rooms. "Okay," I said simply. "Then there's nothing to worry about." She didn't like that. Panic needs a dance partner. Climax. She tried to force the next step. "I'm coming home now." I gave her the boundary I'd prepared for. "No," I said. "Not tonight." Boundaries aren't threats. They're door frames. They let you know which house you're standing in. "This is my home," she snapped. There it was, the entitlement that grows in the shade of secrets. I kept my voice level. "It's our history, but it's my deed. Bought before marriage." Facts are not insults. They're anchors. If you've ever had to remind a teenager about curfew or a contractor about the written bid, you know the tone. Steady, not smug. She accused me of being cruel. I declined the label. Cruel digs holes. Accurate builds rails. "We can talk Monday," I said. "Not tonight." The phone went so quiet I could hear my own breath, even through the receiver. Climax. To make sure there were no surprises later, I told her the practical change I'd already made. "I've updated the garage code," I said. No speech, no gavel, just maintenance. Adults change locks when a roommate moves out. They change codes when a phone gets lost. They change passwords when a breach happens. This was the same muscle. She called it punishment. I called it policy. "You can't do this to me," she said. "I'm doing this for me," I answered. The difference matters. I offered a time to gather her things, offered a friend to be present if she preferred. Respect isn't theatrical, it's procedural. The voice on the other end went sharp, then small, then quiet. I pictured the deck again, and the oak trees that don't care what anyone posts. Climax. She hung up. A minute later, a new storm formed, texts aimed at family and friends. By the time I rinsed my plate, my sister was calling. Then her mother. The script was predictable. I was paranoid, controlling, reckless with accusations. People pick sides fast when they only hear weather reports. I didn't raise my voice. I shared the forecast map. One screenshot at a time, location pin, the deck reflection, the resort's no record. I let the evidence speak in small, polite sentences. Adults appreciate receipts. You can feel the temperature drop when a story meets paper. "I didn't know," her mother whispered. "Most people don't," I said, "until they do." I wasn't hunting sympathy. I was correcting the record. If you've ever managed a rumor at work, you know the only antidote is clarity repeated calmly. Climax. When the phones finally stopped, the house got quiet again, and I made my next grown-up call. I didn't pour a drink or pace the hall. I opened my calendar. Monday, 9 a.m., my attorney. Not revenge, organization. If you're between 30 and 65, you've learned that grown life is won by checklists. Oil change, dentist, taxes, boundaries. I gathered the files into a neat folder. Screenshots, dates, the little timeline I'd drawn on paper. Then I put the pen down and stood at the sink until the water ran cold. Payback is loud. Preparation is quiet. One wrecks your week. The other rescues your future. I wiped the counter, turned off the kitchen light, and let the hum of the refrigerator fill the room like a metronome. What I felt wasn't triumph. It was steadiness, the kind that lets you sleep. Climax. In the morning, I'd take the next step with counsel and documentation, while she decided whether to keep performing or start telling the truth. Friday morning, I sat across from Rachel Kim, a family attorney who looks like she color codes her sleep. No drama, just binders. I told her the short version. The text, the reflection, the map, the name on the deed. She asked 3 questions I respected. What do you want to protect? What can you prove? What will you refuse? After 30, those are the only questions that matter in any crisis. Money, evidence, boundaries. We reviewed the prenup I hadn't looked at since we signed it. The kind you think you'll never need. Separate property, premarital house, clauses that take the heat out of arguments. She didn't promise fireworks. She promised process. Preparation wins, she said, not emotion. It sounded like every good coach I've ever had. I nodded. She slid a legal pad toward me and drew a simple triangle. Assets, proof, conduct. We'll stand on these 3, she said. Climax. This weekend, she added, we document everything. Then we decide. Rachel sent me home with homework. Make a clean folder, she said, digital and physical. If you're 30 or older, you've learned that tidy beats intense every day of the week. I printed screenshots, the location pin, the deck reflection, the resort's no record. I saved copies of posts, grabbed timestamps, and labeled them like I label storage bins. Winter coats, camping gear, Christmas lights. I pulled credit card statements for the last 6 months and marked the odd dinners, the boutique hotel 45 minutes from home, the jewelry store receipt that never turned into jewelry. No detective tricks, just adult chores. Halfway through, I felt something I hadn't felt in days. Oxygen. Notes make air. When your life gets loud, paperwork turns the volume down. I stacked the pages, slid them into a blue folder, and wrote Friday's date on the tab in block letters. Climax. With the file built, it was time for practical steps. Quiet ones that change outcomes. I've learned this at work, with cars, with plumbing. Fix the leak, then discuss feelings. I set a small list on the counter like a grocery run. Update passwords, remove shared access where appropriate, backup photos, note serial numbers for anything valuable. Not to punish, to protect. I kept Rachel's triangle in mind: assets, proof, conduct, and measured my moves against it. Would this protect the house? Yes. Would this preserve evidence? Yes. Would this keep my conduct clean and calm? Yes. When in doubt, I pictured a future judge asking me why I did what I did, and I wrote answers that would still make sense a year from now. If you're 30-65, you know that's the grown-up test. Passion feels good for an hour. Preparation holds up under questions. Climax: by dusk my list was done, and the last item was the one that would echo loudest: the locks. Friday night I changed the garage code and rekeyed the deadbolts. Not a movie scene. No yelling, no door slams. Just a locksmith, a receipt, and a signature. Adults change locks after tenants move, after break-ins, after lost keys. The principle is the same when trust walks out. I packed her things into 2 clean suitcases, folded, labeled, and zipped. No trash bags. No revenge. If you've ever helped a grown child move, you know this posture: firm, respectful, complete. I set the suitcases by the door and placed the folder on the kitchen table like a pilot's flight plan. There was an odd calm in the house, the kind that shows up after you finish a hard chore. I turned off lights room by room and let the quiet collect. Climax. At sunrise, a fist hit the front door. Hard. Saturday had arrived, and so had she. She rattled the handle first, then knocked, then pounded. "Open up, you can't lock me out of my house." I opened the door and stepped back so the storm had room to pass. "It's my house," I said, even. "Purchased before marriage. Title in my name. Facts aren't insults, they're rails." I rolled the suitcases forward. "Your things are packed." She tried on 3 tones: outrage, innocence, nostalgia, like coats in a store mirror. None fit the weather. "We can talk," I said, "just not about feelings that move the goalposts. Names, dates, choices." She tried to step past me. I didn't move. Boundaries have to be felt to be believed. Climax. She went for the oldest script in the book, tears, and asked for a rescue I couldn't provide. Tears aren't crimes, they're human. I didn't mock them. I didn't melt for them. I stood where I was and offered a tissue. "We can fix this," she said. "People love the idea of repair without the cost of replacement. If you've ever kept an old car 1 year too long, you know the math." "If I hadn't found it," I asked, "how long would this have continued?" Her eyes gave the only honest answer: longer. She called me cruel. Cruel rips things, precise trims things. "I'm not punishing you," I said. "I'm protecting me." Adults know the difference, and so do courts. She looked at the suitcases again, as if a zipper could rewind a month. Climax. She spun on her heel, fled down the steps, and within an hour the phones lit up. The first call was her mother, then a cousin, then a mutual friend who speaks fluent drama. "She says you threw her out." I kept my voice low and sent the same 3 exhibits: location pin, deck reflection, resort confirmation. "I'm not asking you to pick sides," I said. "I'm asking you to look." If you've ever mediated a family holiday, you know the trick. Short sentences, no adjectives, receipts only. One by one the calls softened. "I didn't know. I'm sorry." That changes things. I wasn't collecting apologies, I was cleaning the record. It's hard to be painted as a villain when the canvas is numbers and photos. Anger shouts. Accuracy spreads out the paper and lets the room decide. Climax. Then my phone rang with a name I didn't recognize, a voice that would change the angle of everything. "Ethan? This is Melissa Shaw." Calm voice, steady breath. "We've never met. We probably should." She explained the legal part in plain English. The house was still marital property until her divorce finalized. My wife had been staying in another woman's home without her consent. That's not a spicy detail. That's leverage. "I've been documenting for months," she said. "Spending habits, overnight stays, sudden cash withdrawals. Your screenshots help more than you know." We were not allies out of spite. We were adults who had both been told stories. We agreed to exchange only what lawyers would later ask for: dates, receipts, public posts. She thanked me for keeping my voice calm in her feed. Messy helps him. Order helps me. Climax. I hung up and felt the triangle Rachel drew. assets, proof, conduct lock into place. That afternoon, I created a single email thread labeled Exhibits, attached the screenshots, added brief captions like I was labeling photos for an insurance claim. Exhibit A, IG story reflection circled. Exhibit B, location share, timestamp. Exhibit C, resort call log. I copied my attorney and archived duplicates. The point wasn't volume, it was clarity. One clean thread beats 1,000 angry texts. If you've ever handed a neat folder to a CPA and watched relief wash over their face, you know the power of order. I wasn't aiming to embarrass anyone online. I was aiming to be unmistakable on paper. When I hit send, I felt the future move an inch in my direction. Climax. As night fell, a new notification appeared. Melissa had shared her side of the ledger. Melissa's file was the mirror image of mine. Dinners that lined up with my wife's late meetings, boutique hotel charges on nights I'd eaten alone, a jewelry receipt the week before the so-called girls' trip. She wasn't spiteful. She was thorough, the kind of thorough that lets you sleep. My attorney says this shows misuse of marital assets, she wrote, housing, utilities, gifts. Adults understand this phrase, paper trail. It's not about catching someone. It's about closing the loop that kept you doubting your own eyesight. I thanked her, sent back my calendar overlays, and marked a fresh copy for Rachel. The grief didn't disappear. It got filed, which is its own kind of mercy. Climax. With both ledgers aligned, the truth had nowhere to hide. Yet the weekend had one more turn. By Sunday morning, the whispers had changed tone. Friends who'd rushed to defend her were suddenly quiet. A neighbor texted that Derek's car hadn't left his driveway much. Secrets are expensive in middle age. They cost sleep, money, and the respect that makes a room feel safe. I thought about the men I know who rebuilt after hard seasons, not with bravado, but with checklists. Oil change, new tires, fresh paint. I wasn't celebrating. I was stabilizing. I walked the house, windows latched, documents filed, the folder ready for Monday. I brewed coffee and stood by the sink, looking at the yard I still loved. Climax. That's when my phone buzzed with a message from a mutual friend. Heads up, she's not done. Lauren tried one more angle, public sympathy without names. A post about controlling partners, about being locked out, about misunderstandings. The internet loves fog. Adults don't. I didn't engage. I archived it and added a timestamp to the file. Rachel's voice echoed in my head. Assets, proof, conduct. We win by staying boring, she'd said. I made lunch, called my brother about his broken mower, and put the folder in my work bag. Grief still sat in the room, but it wasn't in charge anymore. I'd traded adrenaline for procedure, panic for paper. That's not cold. That's how you keep your life from burning down twice. Climax. Monday morning would be signatures and next steps, and one lobby scene that would change everything. Monday, 10:12 a.m., my building lobby. Coffee line, badge beeps, the usual hum. Then the doors slid open and Lauren walked in like a storm looking for a roof. "You're ruining my life!" she shouted, tears already running. People froze mid-sip. I didn't step toward her. I stepped to the side, giving the moment room to show itself. If you're over 30, you know public scenes have a gravity all their own. I kept my voice where adults keep it, low, even. "We can talk," I said, "but not here." She wanted chaos. I offered structure. She raised her volume. I lowered mine. "You blindsided me," she said. "You left," I answered, steady. The crowd didn't need a speech from me. Crowds don't remember speeches. They remember one sentence that sounds like the truth. Climax. I gave it to her, simple as a ledger line. "You told me you loved Derek." The lobby went silent enough to hear the elevator cables. She blinked like I'd said something obscene in church. "That's not what I—" She started, then caught the eyes around us and changed keys. "I never said I love him," she tried again. "The problem with public air is it carries yesterday's words." "You did," I said, gentle. "In front of me, in front of other people." You could feel the room tilt. Not toward me, toward reality. Adults know that love declared in crisis has a particular ring, and it isn't romantic. It's cornered. I didn't press. I didn't list receipts. I let the sentence work without me. Security glanced my way. I nodded that I was fine. "We can schedule a time," I said, "with counsel present." It wasn't a flex. It was a boundary that could stand up tomorrow. Climax. She backed away in a rush, leaving a wake of whispers. And by afternoon, those whispers turned into posts. By evening, she'd posted without names: controlling husband, twisted story, locked out. The internet loves fog. Adults don't. I didn't reply. I forwarded the post to Rachel and attached the same 3 exhibits we'd used all weekend. "We'll let paper do the talking," Rachel wrote back. "Paper doesn't trend. Paper holds." I slept better than I had in days, not because I felt victorious, but because the process had traction. In the morning, a colleague stopped by my desk. "Saw the scene yesterday. You handled it. Grown." I nodded, grateful, then turned back to my screen. Life keeps moving. Emails, deadlines, lunches. Grief can sit in the passenger seat without touching the wheel. Climax. Around lunch, Melissa's account started circulating, careful, factual, detail-heavy, and the mood of the room shifted again. Melissa didn't name anyone. She didn't need to. Dates, places, expenses. The quiet math of a marriage pulled off balance. People shared her words because they were clear, not spicy. Clarity travels farther than drama with adults. Within 24 hours, Lauren's clients started pausing projects. Freelance checks like to know which way the truth is leaning. I wasn't gloating. I was watching the cost of secrecy make itself known. You can't outrun a paper trail. You can only hope it's written in pencil. This one wasn't. I sent the post to Rachel, who added it to the file with a brief note. Context corroboration. 2 words that feel like a hard floor under your feet. Climax. Meanwhile, word reached me that Derek's divorce was accelerating, and the Oak Deck house was headed for the calculator. Derek's fresh start met the oldest math in the book: division. Half the equity here, half the retirement there, a judge with a calendar and a pen. The deck that looked so good in morning light was now an item line with commas. Adults know this lesson by heart. Everything you keep in secret eventually costs interest. I didn't cheer. I mowed the lawn. There's a kind of dignity in simple chores when life is loud. I ran the trimmer along the fence and thought about all the ways men I respect have recovered, not by torching the past, but by tending what's still theirs. The grass didn't care who said what online. It needed cutting. Climax. That afternoon, Rachel called. Lauren wanted spousal support. Rachel had 3 calm words ready. Adultery clause, enforceable. Rachel walked me through it like she was teaching a class I actually wanted to pass. Prenup terms, separate property, conduct matters. We'll present the evidence, note the timeline, and point to the clause. No chest thumping, no victory lap, just pages and signatures. If you've ever guided a teenager through a ticket or met with a banker about a refinance, you know the tone: polite, complete, unemotional. We weren't punishing. We were applying the agreement we both signed when the weather was sunny. That's what agreements are for. The storms you don't plan to see. Rachel scheduled the filings, CC'd the necessary names, and told me to go for a walk. Climax, I did, and came back to a phone that had gone quiet. Friends who'd argued were now absent. Adults don't announce their decisions. They just stop calling. The group text slowed to a crawl. A couple of guys invited me for coffee without asking for the story. That's how men care. We hand you a mug and a chair. Her side of the family stayed off my screen. Mine stopped asking me to hear her out. I wasn't keeping score, just noting the temperature drop. When the noise fades, you find out what's actually yours. Your house, your job, your routines, your backbone. I made dinner, called my mom, and watched a game without checking my phone. The silence didn't feel like a punishment. It felt like a porch after rain. Climax. 3 months later, the papers were signed. The gavel didn't thunder. It clicked. And that click changed everything. Finalization isn't fireworks. It's a clerk handing you copies and a lawyer shaking your hand. House. Mine, as before. Accounts. Intact. Custody of my own time and attention. Restored. At work, I stopped splitting my focus between spreadsheets and second-guessing. My boss noticed. Promotion isn't a trophy. It's trust renewed. I didn't celebrate with champagne. I changed the air filter, scheduled the car service, and bought new sheets. Fresh things for a fresh chapter. It's how grown men mark time, not with noise, but with maintenance. I texted Rachel a thank you that sounded small for what she'd done. She replied with a smiley and one line: "You did the work." Maybe that was the point. I hadn't won a fight. I'd kept a promise to myself. Climax. News drifted in about the other house. Lauren's money thin, Derek back at his parents' place. I heard it through ordinary channels, mutual friends, a cousin who still talks to everyone. Lauren was working retail, sharing a small apartment, trying to rebuild a client list. Derek was navigating his own paperwork from a spare bedroom. Authentic love, as it turned out, didn't cover utilities. I didn't feel vengeance. I felt distance. Adults know the shape of consequences. They're not punishments from the sky. They're receipts from the choices you signed. I wish them sobriety about what comes next, the same thing I want for myself. When the story gets quiet, it gets honest. There's room for that honesty in all our lives, even when it stings. Climax. At home, I turned that honesty towards simpler work, making my space fully mine again. I started in the garage, which had become a museum of half-finished plans. New pegboard, labeled bins, tools in their lanes. Order is its own kind of courage. I painted the guest room a calm gray, donated the extras, and hung blinds that actually matched. You learn after 30 that joy hides in finished tasks. It doesn't need applause, it needs a Saturday and a hardware receipt. I didn't post any of it. I brewed coffee, walked the perimeter of the yard, and felt the house breathe different. This wasn't payback. This was stewardship. I wasn't erasing history. I was writing legible pages again. Climax. And then, like life always does, it handed me an ordinary test in an ordinary aisle at Target. I saw her by the storage bins, tired, older than the calendar said, clutching a plastic tote like a shield. She started with small talk, then lifted a heavier question. Do you ever think we should have tried counseling? I kept my hands on the cart. Do you ever think you should have talked to me before starting something else? Not venom, balance. We stood there in the hum of fluorescent lights. For a moment, I remembered every porch light and late dinner we'd shared. Then I remembered the reflection in the glass. Respect isn't a feeling, it's a route you choose daily. I hope you're okay, I said, and meant it. But we don't have anything left to solve. I nodded and pushed the cart forward, the wheels clicking over the seam in the tile. Climax. Peace isn't loud. It's the sound of a man walking away when the conversation is truly over. Here's what I learned. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Respect doesn't come stamped on a marriage license. It's earned, day, by choices that hold up in daylight. I chose calm over chaos, evidence over excuses, boundaries over bargaining, and that's how the story stopped owning me. Maybe your crossroads looks different. A secret credit card, a vanishing weekend, a message that doesn't sound like the person you married. The rule still holds. Breathe, document, decide. Then act like the version of yourself you'd be proud to introduce to your kids. I'm not asking you to hate anyone. I'm asking you to honor your peace. If this were your life, what would you do next? A. Tell the truth to the people who matter, or B. Keep it private and move forward. Drop A or B in comments and tell me why. I'm Ethan Cole, and one thing never lied to me: data.